in 1946 at Mother Cabrini's canonization. A young woman who had been a school teacher for 18 years went to her canonization. 3 or 4 weeks later, she walked into her order and resigned and said, I'm going to model my life on Mother Cabrini. And that was Mother Teresa. I tell that story because I want people to know what Cabrini was.
Welcome to the Father Leo Show, where I'm dishing out faith, culture, and commentary. And this week, we're talking all about what it means to be a woman in the modern world, but also how to be a holy woman with the executive producer, Eustace Wolfington, who joins me now as my special guest. Eustace, thanks for being part of the Father Leo Show.
Oh, Father Leo, thanks for having me.
It's really a pleasure to talk to you. As the executive producer, also participated in the movie Bella, as well as in conjunction with the producers of The Sound of Freedom. This movie is going to make a splash. I'd like to know, what was it that motivated you to agree to do such a film about a saint that some people might have heard of, but hopefully now more will?
Yeah. Well, you're right about most people never heard of Mother Cabrini. At the age of 23, in 1955, I kind of adopted Mother Cabrini as my patron saint. I never heard of her before, but I learned about her life through a novena that they gave at an Italian parish in my neighborhood. And I was so impressed with her life that especially what a great entrepreneur she was, that I made her my patron saint.
Well, her spirit certainly continues in her sisters, because in 2015, I understand, Sister Mary Louise Sullivan of her order got in touch with you and was rather persistent, if I remember, or if I heard correctly.
She came to me and said, will you help me do a movie on Mother Cabrini? Because she knew I had done Bella. I said, sister, I don't ever want to do another movie. And I turned her down for 6 years. And finally, in the 7th year, she said, come on up to Cabrini Shrine in New York. I want you to meet an Italian film company. They're going to do the movie. And I went up. I met the company, good company. I saw what they were going to do. And I said, sister, you cannot do that to Cabrini. They were going to do a fairy tale saint movie, handing out flowers, patting kids on the head. I said, we have to do a movie of a powerful woman who just happened to be a nun. You know, you always use the example of Gandhi. He was a Hindu. It didn't get in the way. She's a nun. It can't get in the way. We have to do a movie that appeals universally to everyone, no matter what their faith, and they won't stay away because they think they're being preached to. We'll let her life be the sermon and let them come and fall in love with Cabrini, and then discover her through the back door and really get into her life. It was the right approach to take. And you saw the movie, so
we can certainly talk about that. I wanted to hear a little bit about the development of a film, because when people hear Christian film, they immediately are turned off because it's going to be, as you described it, pious platitudes. Everyone is happy. There's not a lot of edge to it. And we know that life is edgy. Yeah, and we know that saints can make people feel uncomfortable because they're real and authentic people. So what I want to know is kind of get into the mindset of, as you were producing this, what were the characteristics to, first of all, find the lead actress?
Well, one of the things we did, we made Mother Cabrini executive producer. She's the #1 executive producer on this film. We did that because she was such a forgotten saint, but in reality, it had such an effect on the cast and the crew, and they all felt Mother Cabrini was directing everything they did, and in fact, she was. So the first thing led us to an actress. I found out that Scorsese was going to do a movie on Mother Cabrini in 1973. Already Young had gone to him and said, I want to play Mother Cabrini. They had the script done, but they never got the movie done. So I had my brother write Scorsese a letter and say, can we buy your script? He came back and he said, I don't have the script. By the way, we do have that script now, but he didn't have it at the time. And he said, but I'll give you a tip. get an Italian actress. And we had not been looking for an Italian actress. And our casting director found this woman. She studied in London for 10 years. It was very well known in Italy, but not well known in America. And she was just a natural, just incredibly. She came to America. She isolated herself for 30 days away from everybody. She had the book, The Imitation of the Christ, and she got herself into Cabrini. And I mean, she really got herself into Cabrini. When you watch this film, you don't think you're watching a film or watching it. You really believe that that's Mother Cabrini.
For sure. Her acting ability is strong, impressive, and incredibly believable. And I'm glad that you got an Italian because the Italian was truly Italian, even Southern Italian. I speak Italian, and I'm like, allora, questo va bene. They were into it.
Well, every one of that cast was from Italy.
They were amazing.
Not one person talking Italian was from America. No, one. There was one person, Enzo. He was the only American speaking Italian. Everyone else we had to bring in with COVID. Had a heck of a time getting them in, but we had to pull strings. But we did get them in time to do the movie.
Now you mentioned Enzo. I'm not going to give it away, but I cried at that part. I'm just going to tell the audience now. I'm not going to give it away. But you mentioned Enzo. He had a special place in my heart. It was a small part, but it was significant.
Yes.
And I think, strangely, whoever wrote the script, and maybe I should just find out because I'm sure it was a team of people, it seemed like every scene was significant. There wasn't a lot of fluff in a lot of things. Tell me about the screenwriting for this play.
Well, when I finally agreed to do the movie, and that I would do a movie on a strong woman who just happened to be a nun, we also agreed that it would be a charity, a 501(c). Nobody would make money on this film. I had to get a writer. So I interviewed several writers. I finally met this one writer who I liked his scripts. And we traveled to Rome together. We went up to Milan, right outside of Milan, to Mother Cabrini's home, Cadagno. And we spent 10 days living in her town and her original convent. And with all the historian nuns, we read 27 books on her life. And while we were there, the nun pointed something out to us that was not in any of the books. And they showed us that when Mother Cabrini burst into the Senate, that scene was not in any of the books, but they showed us the newspaper clippings and told us the whole story. So we realized that should be an integral part of the movie. But we wouldn't have known that if we hadn't lived in her convent. We walked her footprints in America for 2 years. Visited, Denver, Chicago, Seattle, LA, New Orleans, every place Mother Cabrini spent a lot of time. We didn't do South America, where she spent a lot of time, but we just did America. And then I said to the writer, now you can write the script. You know Mother Cabrini better than anybody. Now you can write the script. And it turned out to be a really, really wonderful script.
It was very telling that it wasn't making up pious thoughts.
Yeah, right.
It was very historical, and which kind of leads to now the cinematography of it all. Truly beautiful and incredibly believable, from the slums of 5 Points to even just New York at the time of her life. How was that all recreated, and where was all of that done?
Well, to recreate 5 Points, because the original 5 Points have been knocked down, we had to get all the photographs from a Jacob Riis. Jacob Riis was the big photographer back then that did all the photographs on the Italian immigrants and on 5 Points. We had to take his photos and rebuild 5 Points almost nail by nail. We had to get a really great architect. It took us 6 months to build it, but it was a perfect duplicate and kind of expensive to do, but you'll find in this movie that our director is a perfectionist. And this is a period movie.
It is.
Everything in this movie is 100% accurate on that period. And he did little things in this movie, like the one scene in the wardroom. You'll notice there's a picture of George Washington behind Mother Cabrini's head. It's an oval picture.
Correct.
The idea was, well, we planned that 6 months ahead of time. Because of COVID, we had plenty of time to plan every single shot ahead of time. And so when we walked into that area to shoot the film, they had a rectangle picture there. We already knew what we were going to do. We took it down, put up the Washington picture. And the significance is two things. One, he's our first American president. She's our first American saint.
Mm.
Secondly, it looked like a halo. When you saw Mother Cabrini's reflection in the glass in the table, it looked like a halo over her head.
Mm.
There's all kinds of little things like that in a movie, but each frame is like a work of art. Really, like a beautiful painting, and that's because he was such a detail on the lighting. They went out to every location. We had 37 locations in Buffalo, and they studied the lighting of every hour of the day. And we would only shoot at certain times of day when the lighting was at a certain place. That's the kind of detail he went into for this movie. And that's why you have that beautiful cinematography.
Oh, it really was beautiful. I mean, even just being out on the Hudson, looking at it, some of that must have been computerized for sure. But where was the filming done? Was it just in one city and state, or?
No, actually, the film was done. We did 9 weeks in Buffalo with, I say, 37 different locations. And we did 10 days in Rome with, I say, about 10 locations. Rome was, when we went to Rome, it was December. Mother Cabrini always looked after us. It was raining like the dickens when we got there, and had been for days. The first day of shooting that we were there, we had the most beautiful weather in Rome they've had in probably 20 years.
Huh.
This was in December. It was like springtime. And so we had beautiful shots. We have beautiful shots in Rome.
Truly. And believable too. I mean, you really brought it back. Now, I had lived in Rome for 6 years, and so it was good to see all of that. One of the things I want to ask you is, in producing something like this, people have no idea how much goes in to even 1 minute of production, because it can change everything.
Oh,
And the devil hates when good people do good things. Can you tell me? I mean, I know might not be a normal question you ask, but what did the devil do to just kind of trip you up? Because I like to say that devil, she's a mean one. I like to use inclusive language when I talk about the devil. But what were some of the challenges you experienced in this production?
well, first of all, it was COVID. That was a big challenge. Um, Secondly, the devil, uh, you're right. And we've been warned a couple of times that he would be after us on this movie, especially. And that's not just during the production of the movie, that's after the production of the movie and marketing the movie. But we had a lot of scenes where a lot of things would happen on the set between people that was bothersome, the little things the devil would kind of create. But overall, Mother Cabrini, executive producer, she watched over us pretty good. And I'd say we had a pretty smooth shooting.
And the people who were involved, the actors and the actresses, they obviously knew it was a religious film. Did you kind of feel their spirit, their gratitude at being Italians, doing a film for Americans? Clearly, it's going to go worldwide.
Well,
But
first of all, we didn't think of it as a religious film. We thought of this as a film of a great woman. She was a saint. She was a Catholic. So obviously, it was a religious film. But it was only religious in the fact that she was a nun, and that she was dealing with the church and the church authorities. But it was really this woman working out in the street, working out with the poor people, working out with. She was working in prisons, working in mines. I mean, Mother Cabrini went everywhere, and she had a philosophy Uh, for example, she was a great educator.
Yes.
She didn't come here until she was 39 years of age. And so the first 2 days she was here, she had a school open because she said to the Italian immigrant, you come from a great country, because they got so beat up when they came here, their dignity dropped to the ground. So she wanted to rebuild their dignity. She instilled in that you come from a great country with great music and great language and great art, which you're now in America. And you're going to become great American citizens, which you're going to do it through education. And she had a thing called education of the heart, which was much more than reading, writing, and arithmetic. She believed people had to know how to handle, their emotions and anger, and their spiritual life was probably, the most important part of their life. And so she taught that, and she said, you're going to do it through education and by doing it on your own. So she instilled pride into them, and she taught them to be self-sufficient, and to really, I mean, the education wasn't just the kids in school.
Correct.
They would go into the homes at night and educate the parents. I mean, they worked morning, noon, and night, these nuns. It was just incredible.
I'm glad that you said that it wasn't a religious film, because a lot of people, especially Catholics, as I'm hearing about it, they see the trailer and they think, oh gosh, what is this about? Because it makes it sound like, it's not going to be religious. And part of me wants to smack people upside the head and say, not everything has to be religious. Even if they're a religious person, they've got to do normal worldly things, but with the spirit. So what was kind of your motivation? Obviously, this touches on many tones: feminism, immigration, poverty, education. But what were the things that you really wanted this movie, this feature to touch on?
Well, her life was the centerpiece, and her life was the sermon. It was religious in the sense of, there's a great poem written by Edgar Guest that said, I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day. St. Francis said, when I give sermons, sometimes I use words. The real true sermon is watching people in action doing it, not people talking about it. We always give the example. For example, if a lot of people walk down the street and they'll walk by a homeless person, Mother Cabrini never would. If Mother Cabrini saw a homeless person, she not only wouldn't walk by them, she'd have a place open up for them that night. And she just was such an incredibly gifted organizational woman, and she just knew how to make things happen. And if she had no money, she put her sisters on the street begging. But she got it done. Nothing got in the way with Mother Cabrini getting things done. So the movie wants to show that. It wants to show tenacity. It wants to show the perseverance of never giving up, overcoming obstacles, but above all, to give hope. People come into this movie, and many letters we have written on this, because we screened the movie over 200 times to an audiences of 200 to 500 people in each screening. And the feedback they all said was that we came into the movie really depressed about the broken world. And we're really fearful about the future. We walked out of this movie full of hope. We walked out of this movie with no more fear, but what instead replaced by the desire to really, and the inspiration. They're incredibly inspired when they walk out of this movie, and the inspiration to go out and make improvements and live a better life. Make changes in the world, and it just has especially a transformation on young people who don't have any role models. The Post magazine had a big write-up the other day about there's this generation of I guess they call them the Z generation or X generation. I get all mixed up on generations, but that they spend all their time on psychiatrists' couches. They're afraid of fear, suicide, and drugs. And these are really good people, but they don't have a role model to follow. And they come in and see this movie, and I'm telling you, it changes them. And every father sees this movie says, my daughter has to see this movie. And every grandfather says, my grandchildren have to see this movie. But it just appeals to everybody. It's a movie of tremendous hope. And as you say, the beauty of cinematography. So everyone says everybody has to see this film. This is a must-see film.
It really is. I would agree to that. Part of producing something like this requires a lot of editing. I want to ask you, were there any parts that were edited out that you wish would have stayed, or when you look at this final thing, you think, okay, no, it's on the editing floor, but this is great.
Well, when Alejandro shot this movie, he shot it with what we call long shots.
Sure.
He made it very hard to edit. Uh, he,
That's true.
he kind of wanted to build that out as he went into it. Uh, I don't know. I don't think we took anything out that I wouldn't have put. But we had taken some things out, but we did put them back
I see.
because all the dialogue is so good in this movie. There's one scene where people are saying to Mother Cabrini, "Aren't you afraid of death?" And because she was a very sickly woman,
Correct.
and she said, uh, "Yes, I'm afraid of death, but I mean."
She said that she's going to keep working.
That's the kind of, but what she said, when I work, every day I work, I believe it gives me an extra day of living.
That's right.
And she says, when I'm not working, that's when death seems very, very real. And it's a great scene. It's a beautiful scene.
Oh, it was beautiful. And it immediately, she took the role of a nun for me. I immediately felt guilty because for any days off that I might have taken. When we talk about the movie itself, there were many good parts. I mean, all of them were just good parts. Is there a part that just kind of strikes you and will stay with you? Because there were a few for me.
Uh, I've seen this movie probably, and I've sat through every single screening. So I've seen this movie maybe 200 times. So I know it backwards and forwards. And I love it every time I see it. I love the shot when she's with Victoria and the forgiveness. And when she says, we have something in common, Victoria says, what? And she said, we're both survivors.
Correct.
We're survivors. I love that section, that line. I love it when she's the doctor tells her she has 2 years to live, and she goes back to her nuns and she says to her nuns, "I may be a while. There's times I may be away." Is what she said. She said you have to learn to face your fears, and you have to learn that you can do all things in Him who strengthens us, which was Mother Cabrini's favorite line, by the way. And
Right.
even in the statues and the book she has open, that's the quote she always has. I love the scene where she said, "I am a woman. I am Italian." When they after they had arrested her.
Right.
This is an action movie. This is a fun movie.
Oh,
Alejandro, it's entertaining. Alejandro said, "Look, a movie. People go to the movies to be entertained, and you go to this movie, you're entertained. I mean, you cry a lot and you laugh a lot, but you are so entertained and so blown away with the majesty of the film and the way it's shot. I mean, most people say, I never expected this. Even when they know, but they've been told what it is, they say, I just never expected it. They say, I'm speechless. I'm speechless. It's the best movie I've ever seen in my life. Or it's one of the top 3 movies I've ever seen in my life. They say either one.
It took me by great surprise.
Yeah.
I had seen The Sound of Freedom, great movie. I had seen Bella, great movie. And so I knew that I would be inspired by the content, but at the same time was I looking forward to the cinematography, the professionalism, the real details. No, it really took me by surprise in a very, very good way. Now, Eustace, I want to tell you one of my favorite lines in the whole movie. And since I am a chef and priest and I do all this stuff with food, my favorite line was when Paolo and Enzo were talking, wondering if they're going to go and visit the sisters at the new orphanage they set up. He says, I've never eaten crostata, which was like the cake. and it was so Italian for a mother, a spiritual mother, and a religious mother to bring God's children to the table with crostata. It was just fantastic, and it made me hungry. So I want to say thank you for the opportunity. I also kind of want to give you the chance to tell me a little bit more about what your hopes are for the film and what's going to be the next set, because I know it's going to be featured and released on National Women's Day. I believe it's March 8th.
March the 8th, which
So
is 2 days away.
yes, exactly.
We're there. We're there.
You are here and there. What's going to happen? What's going to be the
Our hopes are, when I learned about Mother Cabrini when I was young, I traveled around the world and I would talk about her. And I was so shocked that nobody knew her.
Hmm.
Here she is, the first American saint. And by the way, I had never heard of her. I went through 12 years of Catholic education. And when I walked in church that day, I had never heard of her before, ever. Uh, and what's amazing is she accomplished so much. One thing that I'd like people to know is that in 1946, at Mother Cabrini's canonization, July the 7th, in 1946, a young woman who had been a school teacher for 18 years went to her canonization. And on August the 18th, 3 or 4 weeks later, she walked into her order and resigned and said, I'm going to model my life on Mother Cabrini. And that was Mother Teresa. And I tell that story because I want people to know what Cabrini was. She, like, and you see it in the movie. I mean, she saw the face of Christ in everyone. And like Mother Teresa, she just took care of people out of love. It had nothing to do with being a Catholic.
right.
She just lived the gospel. And that's what Mother Cabrini does. She lives the gospel. You're watching the gospel in action when you go to this movie. But you're watching it because it's so great, her charm and her smarts. Here she's a little tiny woman, sickly, but she knew how to charm, an archbishop. She knew how to charm the Pope. She knew how to win things over through, like every one of her orphans were always dressed to the nines. You'll notice in the movie when they show him in the mirror, his new outfit, she had 3 or 4 seamstresses in every one of her locations. And the first thing they did with the young Italians was dress them up, make them look like $1,000,000, teach them how to play music, and march them around town playing music so people would look and say, who are these beautiful people? And they always had this image of the Italians not being beautiful people.
Right.
And here she is showing them off. That's the way she did things. Her vision was eternity. And therefore nothing got in her way, because she knew she had this incredible devotion to the Sacred Heart. And throughout our movie, by the way, you see all kinds of, images of the statue and the pictures of the hearts of the Sacred Heart and the crucifixes. I mean, it's a Catholic movie,
Sure.
but it's not being thrown in your face. So, I just can't tell you how many people outside the Catholic Church who come to see this movie and are so thankful that they expected. They didn't even want to come because they thought they were going to get preached to.
Correct.
And they're so motivated that they just saw this movie, this great woman and her great life and the great humanitarian way she lived. She's such an example. So you say, what do I want for the movie? My biggest fear for the movie is that somebody won't see it. That's my biggest fear. Because I know what the movie will do to anybody who sees it. It'll change their life. And it'll get them excited. We spent $50 million on this movie. This is not a cheap movie.
No.
For independent film, this is a lot of money. But we did $100 million film for $50 million. And it's an epic film like any Broadway production. There's no, or Hollywood production. There's nobody produced a movie of a higher caliber than this movie.
Now, I would agree to that, and when I hear this, I don't want to bring up any negativity, but have you heard criticisms and how do you respond to them? What, if anything?
Right now, we've had 30, I think it's approximately 30 critics. We are at 96% on the tomato score.
Wow.
With the critics. Now the audience hasn't seen it yet, so we don't have the audience, and I think that's going to be 100%. But I right now with the critics we're 96%, and that's usually around 60%, 65%. Um, so I mean there are critics. Some people, depending where they're coming from, we only had one bad review, and when you read it, they're not really giving us a bad review. They're really um, giving the Sound of Freedom. They didn't like Sound of Freedom.
That's exactly where I was going. Thank you for being honest with me.
So, so they took Sound of Freedom and they took Alejandro and they start talking about him and Sound of Freedom. And here they are critiquing Cabrini, and so then we'll just apply part of that to Cabrini. But even when people have want to criticize the movie, they can't help saying how beautiful it is, and how beautiful the cinematography is, how great the acting is. Oh, and I'll tell you one thing now, which I don't think even you saw yet. Andrea,
Wait a minute, I'm going to get the inside scoop, please. I love it.
yeah. Andrea Bocelli's daughter Virginia has a role in this movie.
I thought, okay,
She's the one that's singing outside the opera singer house that night.
thank you. Thank you. That's excellent.
But Andrea and his daughter took our film, which was called Dare to Be. Our song, that's a song we wrote, our composer wrote. This is all original music in this beautiful music. And he wrote this song, and it's sung by Andrea Bocelli and his daughter. And you can go to YouTube and look up Dare to Be, and you can see that it's a video it has a lot of clips of the movie in it, but it shows Andrea and his daughter singing this song, and it is spectacular.
It really is a spectacular film. I'm just going to kind of bring it to a close here because I don't want to give too much away. And I'm not a hyperbolic person when it comes to this stuff because I don't believe that we need to exaggerate because people will walk and be like, "It wasn't that great," but I will just say I was mightily, mightily impressed. Even with some of the little snipping that I'm hearing from both the left and the right, they had to also say, "But it was a great film." They wish they would have done this. They wish you would have done that. And I say, well, then go ahead and produce your own film.
Well,
But
some,
what
some,
this
some
is,
people say, "I wish we had more prayer life," and
ah,
and the point is that uh, what hurts so many saint movies is that you don't get a feel for the person. All you do is get a feel for their prayer life. With Cabrini, this is like you're seeing people in action. I mean, this is like you feel part of it. This is some real. This is somebody real in your life. It's not just a fairy tale movie. And I guess what I just tell people, I always say to people, I like to keep your expectations low, but you're going to love this film. And when it's all over, you're going to come to me and tell me you love it more than I said you were going to love it.
I love that.
That's happened every single time. That's every
No
single
doubt.
time.
The line that she says to the Holy Father that the world isn't big enough that all she's going to do was uniquely contrasted to the inside voices telling her stay in your lane,
Yeah.
just stay where you belong. And it's a strange thing because if they take that to prayer, people are going to realize, no, the world is God's. This is what we're supposed to be doing. So I felt inspired. I will admit, I will offer this confession to Eustace. I had to watch it in 3 parts because I was watching it as I was traveling. I got laid over twice, and I was mad that the layover wasn't longer so that I could watch it all together. And I'm looking forward to letting as many people know as possible that this is worthwhile seeing.
You didn't see it on the big screen then.
No, I've not had the opportunity because my travel schedule is so busy. But that's what I'm saying. I'm looking forward to it.
That's an experience. Now remember, I've seen it in all forms.
Sure.
The big screen, this thing is so beautifully done.
I know.
The big screen, you see detail that you don't see on the smaller screen. It's so beautiful.
I completely.
People say, I mean, more people say I'm speechless coming out of this movie. I mean, I don't make those things up, and I didn't think anybody would use those words. but it's happened again. It's happened in letters to us. They say it. I have it on testimonials. I'm speechless. Uh, and it's the kind of movie that stays with you. And as our director has a saying, he says, a movie really begins when it ends.
Hmm.
Meaning when you walk out, it's really beginning because now it stays with you and you think about it and you ponder about it. And that's what this movie does. This movie has you thinking for weeks and weeks afterwards. And families talk about it. This is a family movie. I mean, families go to this together and they go home and they just have great conversations about it. It's a powerful, and the one word they all use is inspirational and it's powerful. And every single scene is powerful. And some are super powerful. Um, I just can't say enough about the film. And it's a charity, so there's no reason for me to say this to make any money because I'm never going to make a nickel. It's done nothing but cost me money, nothing but cost us time, nothing but cost us lay awake at nights for something. And any money coming to it goes 100% to charity. Um, and and that's being managed by the New York uh, Mellon Bank, um, the funds and the charity. Uh, but I tell people you just got to see this movie.
Well, I would certainly concur. I agree. I'll do everything I can to let people know, and more importantly, to know that holiness can be so convicting as she was. She had such a convicting way of doing things, and it's a great example for all of us. And I'm so glad that her spirit was working through her nun who pestered you for 7 years.
Yeah, that's right. She was just like Mother Cabrini.
Yeah, for
Mother
sure.
Cabrini never gave up.
Well, Eustace, I can't thank you enough for taking the time and joining me here on the Father Leo Show. If people want to check out this movie, it's going to be out and available on March the 8th. But at the same time, it'll be available for screenings across the country, if I imagine, correct?
Yeah, we have a very wide release for an independent film. We're opening up on 2,800 theaters, and
Right.
it may be 3,000 theaters by opening date. But right now it's at 2,800, and that's a big, big release. It's not going to be hard to see because it's going to be at a theater near you. And uh,
And then when will people be available to see it, streaming or on demand?
well, that'll happen. Well, first of all, I would beg anyone not to wait for streaming
Great.
because you just don't want to miss the experience of the big film. You really don't. It's just you live and you die. God only put us here for so long on earth, and there's not many great events that are going to happen in your life. There's confirmation, there's first communion, there's baptism, there's the day you get married, and there's some other great events. This movie will be an event in your life. So I just say to people, don't miss it. Uh,
Yes, which I truly want to recommend anyone watching this. The more you see it in the theaters itself, the more it actually grows and perpetuates. It's just basically the theater algorithm, so to speak. So
Father Leo, it was Pope Leo the 13th, as you know,
I
that was
do.
the Pope of Mother Cabrini, and my confirmation name is Leo. So so the Leo. By the way, that was after Pope Leo the 13th. Honestly, that's where I got my confirmation name. And who would know that later on I'd be doing Cabrini, when it was she and Pope Leo the 13th that collaborated, that did all that. You know what I'm saying?
I
And
do.
they became dear friends. And the way we got the name Cabrini was that every time Leo would see her in the Vatican from a distance, he'd yell out, "Hey Cabrini, hey Cabrini." So we decided to make that the name of the movie. I started out with "Hey Cabrini," and then we took the "Hey" off and just made it.
Well, my mom named me after Pope Leo the 13th because people say, well, why not Leo the Great? My mom says, you're not that great. So it's 13. But he even did amazing things. I look forward to one of these days being with you as you're also screening this. I would love to see the reactions. I'd love to watch how you're watching it, even for the 100th time, because I can see this is going to be on my list of things to see pretty regularly to keep myself motivated spiritually and practically. So I look forward to that day when we can meet in person. But in the meantime, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to be with us here. We know that you're going to be pretty busy in the next couple of weeks, so be assured of our prayers for you. So any last thoughts or any last words from you, Eustace?
I just want to thank you. And again, I just want to say to everybody, uh, you really do owe it to yourself to see the movie. And anyone you recommend to see it will go out of their way to thank you. Um, that sounds a little arrogant. It's not arrogant. It's based on 20,000 people that have seen the movie, and all 20,000 have the same reaction. It's not just uh, anyone who sees this movie. I don't care whether you're atheist, and we show it to Muslims and Hindus and every ethnic group, and they just all. I'm telling you, I don't care who it is. This movie just grabs them.
Well, it is not just based on a true story. It is a true account of her story.
And here's the last thing I'll say.
Please.
In every generation, there's a film that captures the spirit of the time. In the Second World War, Mrs. Miniver was that movie, and Winston Churchill said it did more to win the war for England than anything else. In our time, Sophia Loren wanted to do a movie on Mother Cabrini in 1950. Scorsese was going to the movie in 73 with Loretta Young. They didn't get it done.
Mm.
We got the movie done, and we didn't get it done. Our Lord wanted this movie done. This might sound corny to some people, but I'm convinced our Lord wanted this movie done for this time. It reminds me so much when I was 28 years old, John F. Kennedy was made inaugurated the president. And at his inauguration, he said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." And our country's become so much me, 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 me. And everything's about us, 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 us. And when you walk out of the Cabrini movie, you realize it's more that you want to be on the other side, giving, 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 giving. And so it's ask not, that spirit will be in your soul when you walk out. We believe that God has wired everybody the same. And let's say there's 5 hot points of people's craving that they really, really need for peace in their life. And some of them have heavy shells, but this movie gets through and touches all those spots in everybody. It just has that ability.
Beautiful.
So, Father?
Eustace Wolfington, I can't thank you enough. I want to just let people know that if you enjoyed this conversation, just make sure you tell people to like and subscribe to the Father Leo Show. Please make sure you watch this film. I'm going to kind of close up by simply saying that when I give talks, I talk about the Blessed Mother as the most ferocious for the faith because she's a woman, she's a mother, and we know in the animal kingdom, there's no one more ferocious than a mother who wants to protect and feed her children. And that's exactly what Cabrini did. You are going to see faithful ferocity and a faithful femininity in a world that doesn't know what it means. This movie is going to hit so many points. People are going to have to stop, reflect, and hopefully see it again. Thank you for watching the Father Leo Show. God bless you and stay hungry for God.